Hello, people of the internet. Thanks for joining me. Bear with me a second here while I adjust my camera. Hello there. Thanks. I see people saying hello in the chat. I appreciate you saying hello in the chat. I'm just going to try and figure out how to angle this best. So bear with me while I move my computer around. If it comes crashing down, you'll know I've dropped my computer here. I'm trying to get my drawing board pretty well situated here. I guess that's pretty good. As you can see, I cleaned my studio for the event. Just kidding. This is actually much cleaner than my studio normally is. I see the green bar, so you can all hear me, right? Let me know if you can't hear me because I was testing earlier and there was some issues. But it looks like the sound is working good, which is great. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to anyone who watches this video after the fact. The main reason we're here is for the Burnt Kickstarter. So I'm going to do some, in just a second here, I'm going to do some live drawings. And anyone who's here at the live session who says hello in the chat or leaves a comment, and this is very important, you have to leave a comment, either if your username is your Kickstarter username, that's fine. But if you have a different YouTube username versus your Kickstarter username, please put your Kickstarter username in the chat so I know who to send the free stuff to. So the free stuff for participating in this YouTube Live is going to be, I have a 4-page mini Hellhole comic called Sleight of Hand. It's a brand new story. It's a self-contained little short 4-page story called Sleight of Hand. It features the chief of police, Karen, who's a character in Hellhole Quarterly. For anyone who's reading Hellhole Quarterly, will probably recognize Karen. And then it also has a new character named Skip, who's a skeleton and who is a master of prestidigitation. Is very good with their fingers, can practice sleight of hand. So Karen recruits Skip to use his sleight of hand to get him into this poker game because she's trying to infiltrate this mob situation. And I won't get into spoiler territory, but I will say, like, she hires him for this very specific job and it does not go as expected. So that's what the little short story is. Anyone who is a backer on Kickstarter, anyone who is a physical backer on Kickstarter and who watches this video and leaves a message in chat with their Kickstarter username will get the physical mini comic in addition to the new edition of Burnt. If you are a digital-only backer, you will get a digital version of the comic sent to you along with your digital version of Burnt. And then, like I said, I'm also going to do some drawing here in just a second. And the drawings are just for people who are here live right now. So I don't know how many I'll get through in the next hour, but probably a fair amount. And then after the fact, I will go through and look at the chat and all the names in there, and I will raffle off the drawings for whoever participated in the live chat, the live event, excuse me. So if we don't get 1 million people, everyone watching this right now might get a free drawing. We will find out. Okay, so that all being said, this is also a AMA and Ask Me Anything. So if you have questions about Burnt or my comics or really anything, you can put them in the chat and I will respond to them as I'm drawing here. I'm going to go ahead and get started as soon as I realize where I put my markers. Here they are. So I did solicit my Patreon backers for questions, so I'd have questions ready to go. So I'm going to start with my Patreon questions. I'm going to read the question and then I'm just going to start drawing and answer it while I'm drawing here. So I just realized I don't have any pencils. I'm going to do kind of like so I'm going to draw on cardboard because I like it. I think it's fun. This is just some pieces of cardboard I just cut recently. I'll trim them down and make them prettier before I send them to people. But basically what I'm going to do is just kind of a quick pencil drawing, like a very loose pencil drawing, and then go over it with Sharpie marker. And then if there's time, go over that with a little bit of colored pencil. And the reason I like working on cardboard is it already has kind of this neutral brown color. So you can do kind of like a quick drawing with black, and then you can add a little highlights with colored pencil. And I think it looks really sharp. And hopefully this is bold enough that it'll show up decent on the screen. We're gonna find out together. But anyway, I just realized I don't have any pencils. Here's a pencil. Great. So my Patreon people who were nice enough to send questions in, I'm going to read a couple of those. First one I got here is, what inspired you to do your Burnt story? Okay, so Burnt was my first official graphic novel. It's the first like finished comic book thing I ever did. And it's kind of a long story. I'll try and tell the abbreviated version of the story here. Let me move this over so you can actually see it on the screen. So way back when, I want to say this is like 2008, maybe or so. I was working as a construction worker. That was my full time job. I was doing house construction type stuff, but I was trying to I was trying to do art. I was trying to make it happen, and I'd recently gotten back into comic books. I mean, I always loved comic books, but I'd recently gotten back into actually drawing my own comic books. Um, and a at the time, DC Comics had a thing called Zuda Comics, which was kind of this web imprint of DC where they were paying people to do web comics, and it was a competition. And the idea was you did like an 8-page comic, and if they accepted it, every month they would have like 10 new 8-page comics, and then people would vote on them, and the winning vote would end up getting a contract with DC Comics. And so Burnt was originally that. I'd heard about the DC Comics thing, and at the time I was writing short stuff and writing like proposals for stories and sending them to publishers. And I decided, oh, I'll try this Zuda Comics thing. So I sent Burnt in. At the time, it was called As is Inferno. As is the main character in Burnt. So the title was As is Inferno. You know what? I think the original title was Hellhole, but the legal department at DC told me I had to change it. I don't know why they told me I had to change it. I don't think Hellhole is trademarked anywhere, but they wanted me to change it. So then I said, well, what about As is Inferno? Because I figured Dante's Inferno was in the public domain. It's an old enough name, can't possibly be copyrighted. And they were okay with As is Inferno. Which is, I mentioned that just because it's kind of funny that I later went back to Hellhole. I've yet to be sued by anyone for using the name Hellhole, so hopefully it's fine. Yeah, so it was an 8-page comic. It was essentially what the beginning of Burnt is. I've since like redrawn and reconfigured those pages a little bit, but the original 8 pages of Burnt are more or less what was in the Zuda competition. And yeah, and it was the setup for the story. This is a very minor spoiler if you haven't read Burnt yet, but Burnt is essentially a murder mystery. It's essentially someone murders Lucifer, and the whole graphic novels, you're trying to figure out who murdered Lucifer, as the main character is trying to figure out who murdered Lucifer, right? But anyway, it was those 8 pages, and then it was in the competition, and actually did well in the competition. Whoever, like I said, whoever got the most votes got the contract with DC, and they would like update it every week who had the most votes. And for the majority of the competition, it was number 1, which was great. I was all excited. I was like, I'm going to work for DC. But then kind of the last week, another comic surpassed me. So I did not get the contract with DC, but it's okay. So it did not end up getting published with DC. But then for years, I kind of had those 8 pages, and I would send them to publishers, and nothing ever really came of it. And then Kickstarter finally became a thing. It was actually a dude named Sean Causley, who's another comic book artist who I met through Kickstarter, through Zuda. He was another Zuda participant. He tuned me into Kickstarter because he was like, "Oh, how's it going? You're checking in or whatever." And I was like, "Oh, I'm still sending." I think the name changed to Burnt by then. I'm still sending Burnt around to publishers. No one's really interested. And he's like, "Oh, you don't need a publisher." He's like, "You publish it yourself. There's this thing called Kickstarter. Get money there, and you just publish it yourself." And I was like, "Ooh, tell me more." And basically, that's how Burnt ended up on Kickstarter way back in. This would have been, when was this? I'm trying to think now. It was like 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. Kind of the early days of Kickstarter. But yeah, that's sort of the origin of Burnt, so to speak. So, all right. So I got my little portrait of Az here. Pull it up to the camera here. There's my quick little portrait of Az. I am gonna erase the pencil real quick and throw a little colored pencil on there, and then call this one done and move on to the next one. All right. So I'm just going to look in the chat real quick to see if there's questions in there. I love your artwork. What kind of styling would you call it? Oh, okay. What kind of styling would I call my artwork? I'm not sure how to answer that. I mean, I would call it cartooning, I guess, is what I do. Graphic art. I don't know. It's like I mean, the thing this is a very rough example of this, but the thing I am always trying to do is try and do something that's like bold, but at the same time also very detailed. So that's why you have like the solid shadows on the face and stuff, but then you still have like the little noodly hairs. I like things that kind of do both, that are bold and graphic, but then are also in spots, like hyper detailed is kind of what I'm going for. All right, so I'm going to throw a little color on here. Let me look at my Kickstarter question, or excuse me, my Patreon questions. Who are the artists that have inspired you to develop your unique style and visual lens? Some of your faves whose energy you try to channel. Okay, so this goes in line with the last question. There's a million fantastic artists out there, and I like most of them. I like all the fantastic ones. But if I had to pick my three favorites would be Mike Mignola, who everyone knows is the creator of Hellboy, and you can kind of see a very obvious Mignola influence in here. And Sergio Aragones, who most people know. He was a longtime Mad Magazine artist. He also did a comic called Gru the Wanderer. They still make new Grus. It's like still going. But I love, even before I read, quote unquote proper comics, I was reading Mad Magazine as a very young kid. And so I would see Sergio's artwork there. So he's a big influence. If you don't know his work, it's very cartoony. It's very, it looks like it's drawn quickly. It's very kind of fluid and loose and stuff. So in a lot of ways, it's a very sharp contrast to Mike Mignola, who kind of has the graphic shapes and the solid blacks. And then the third guy who is my favorite is a guy named Jeff Darrow, who is a fantastic artist. In the early 90s, I want to say, he did a comic called Hard Boiled with Frank Miller. That's phenomenal. It's very R-rated. I mean, it's probably X-rated. It has a lot of graphic violence and a lot of graphic sex in it. Just so you know, but it's a fantastic comic. I really, really love it. And kind of and he does like insanely detailed stuff, like hyper detailed stuff. Like unbelievable how detailed he is with his drawings. And based on his work in Hard Boiled, he came to the attention of the then Wachowski brothers, who are now the Wachowski sisters, I guess. But they were aware of his work through Hard Boiled, and he ended up being one of the main artists on the Matrix movies, on the original Matrix movies. So if you don't know Jeff Darrow's work, but you've seen the Matrix movies and you've seen the super intricate, like the octopus spider looking tentacle monster robot things, those very much look like a Jeff Darrow drawing, and the Jeff Darrow influence is very, very obvious in that movie if you know Jeff Darrow's work. So yeah, so Mike Mignola, Sergio Aragones, and Jeff Darrow are my three favorites. Who I'm, my work doesn't really look like any of those three, but if you put those three in a blender, they have pretty disparate styles. But if you put those three in a blender and mix them up, then you could look at my work and be like, yeah, that's sort of what Thane's work is an attempt to mix up those three guys. I've never met Mike Mignola. I would love to meet him. I've met Jeff Darrow a couple times. He's super cool. And I've met Sergio Aragones once, and he was also super cool. So maybe one day I'll meet Mike Mignola, and I can cross him off my list of my three heroes that I've gotten to meet. Jeff Darrow gave me a pull quote, like the little quotes on the back of books. He gave me a pull quote to put on a book, which was super nice of him and super generous of him. So if you have, I think it's the Origins. I think it's Quick the Clockwork Knight Origins trade paperback has a quote by Jeff Darrow on it, which I'm thrilled that he did that for me. All right, what else do we have here? Are you a Marvel or a DC guy, and who is your favorite superhero? These days, my favorite superhero is Hellboy, without question. But growing up, I was definitely a Marvel guy. I was definitely a Marvel kid. Um, when I was young, like the very first like actual comic book I ever bought was after I remember this clearly because like I said, I was a giant Mad Magazine fan, and I remember going in the store one day. This is when people used to buy their stuff and off the the spinner rack at the local grocery store. I went in to look for Mad Magazine. They had like no new Mad Magazines, and I was sad about that. I told my mom, "Oh, there's no new Mad Magazine." She's like, "Oh, just get a comic book." So I was like, "All right." So then I wandered over from the magazine section to the comic book section, and I just looked at what was on the rack. I'd read comic strips in the newspaper, and Mad Magazine has a bunch of short comics in it, so I was familiar with comics in general, but I'd never bought an actual comic book. So I kind of excuse me, I kind of leafed through the selection there on the spinner rack, and the one that caught my eye was Wolverine number 8. I remember this book very clearly. I read it to tatters. I don't still have it anymore, which makes me sad. But it was Wolverine number 8. Chris Claremont was the writer. John Buscema was the penciler, I believe. Al Williams was the inker. I could be wrong about that. But I bought that comic. It had the Gray Hulk in it. Was the guest star in Wolverine number 8. Wolverine the monthly series number 8, I should say, because there was a mini series that preceded that. And I loved it, and I loved it, loved it, loved it. And then I was like a giant Wolverine fan from there on in, and kind of an X-Men fan by association, but primarily Wolverine. I was all about Wolverine. And then I kind of got into some other stuff, but yeah, mostly Marvel, almost exclusively Marvel. When the Image thing happened, I did read a bunch of Image comics. I was a big Spawn fan for a bit, and a big McFarlane fan for a bit. Technically, I worked for Todd McFarlane for a bit too, because I did do a brief stint at McFarlane Toys. So I was into Image comics as well. All right, so here we go. So here's the quick little portrait of Az there. It's nice because the color really pops on the brown. What is this cardboard that I'm drawing on? So there's a quick portrait of Az. I'm gonna move on and do something else here. Grab another random piece of cardboard and just start drawing something, whatever pops into my head. All right, what else do we have here? So I'm looking at the chat here. Yeah, if you're not familiar with Sergio Aragonés or Jeff Darrow, I highly recommend checking out their stuff. Jeff Darrow does a book called Shaolin Cowboy that has recently come out, and they're all very good. They're all like, you'll see the crazy detailed art in that. Let's see what else. I think that's all the questions in the chat. Let's go back to our trusty Patreon people here. I should mention I have a Patreon. if you're at all interested, I do have a Patreon. It's just my name, Thane Benson. I'm easy to find on Patreon, but I do I put a lot of sketches and a lot of kind of behind the scenes stuff on Patreon. So check it out if you're interested. There is even like a free tier on Patreon. If you don't have the cash, it's totally fine. You can sign up, and I do not as frequently, but I do somewhat regularly post free stuff on Patreon too. You can see some behind the scenes stuff. All right, so another one of my Patreon questions is: when you come up with a story, do you usually have the conclusion / resolution in mind from near get-go, or do you conceive situations and scenes and then figure out a suitable endpoint? It's a very good question. It's a very writerly question. And the very short answer is I make it up as I go. So I almost always do not have an ending. Sometimes, depending on the story and what I'm trying to do with the story, like sometimes the ending is a big part of the story from the beginning, or what I think is going to be the ending. But in most situations, I do not know the ending, and I kind of make it up as I go. And before I started doing comics, comics and graphic novels. There was a period of time when I was trying to be a novelist. So I was like writing these like novel length manuscripts. I I have not looked at any of that stuff in a long time. I'm sure it's probably pretty bad if I revisited it. But I was like super into writing, kind of in my early 20s, and I was trying to be a novelist. Was my plan. I don't know why I had this crazy plan. But anyway, so I would spend a lot of time writing stories, and kind of through doing that, I got it to the point where at first I would sort of plot out what I was doing, but then kind of anyone who's a writer knows this. Like as you write stuff, stuff occurs to you, and things change as you write it, and you're often surprised by what happens when you're writing. And then that ended up being like my favorite thing, being like where do these like where's this stuff coming from? Where do these ideas come from? And then you do it enough, and you sort of just start like trusting in it happening. So you like set up situations and just sort of trust that the solution will come to you, like set up your own problems. So I'm often like writing myself into corners, and coming up with problems that need solutions, and just having the faith that, that I will come up with the solution by the end. Um, so to go back to Burnt for a second, like I said, the original Burnt was about 8 pages long, and it ended with Lucifer being murdered, and Az being like, "Uh-oh, I got to figure out who murdered Lucifer." So when it was just those 8 pages, like I didn't even know who murdered Lucifer. I had no idea. All I had was those like 8 pages. So I did not figure out the whole story of Burnt until I actually wrote the whole thing out. I think I put it on Kickstarter back in whenever that was, 2010 or so. And then when it made its money on Kickstarter, I was like, oh, I guess I gotta finish this now. Then I think I sat down and like wrote out the whole story. And by the time I got to the ending, I had figured out who murdered Lucifer, and yeah, and the story kind of evolved that way. I do think like that's how I like to write, and I think that's a fun way to write. And I think if I'm guessing what's going to happen next, the reader is going to be guessing what happens to the story next. So it keeps the story fresh and everything. The only drawback to writing in that way, I would say, is sometimes you do misfire, and you do have to like go back and like rewrite stuff where you like go down kind of the wrong road, so to speak, for a bit. Um, so making it up as you go, or I think the preferred writing term is pantsing. There's kind of two basic schools of writing, and one is plotting, where you plot it all out, and one is pantsing, where you write by the seat of your pants. And I'm a big believer in the pantsing method. I think the plotting method to me sounds like homework. It sounds so boring to me. Like I think it would just like kill the energy of the story to plot the entire thing out before you write it. So what was I going to say? So yeah, I guess all I'm saying is I like pantsing. That is my preferred way to write. Where is? Well, I guess I'll use this. Alrighty. Oh, I see some love for Gru in the chat there. Gru is the best. Gru is really great. So the comic I'm probably best known for is called Quick the Clockwork Knight. It's very different than Burnt. It's sort of an all ages adventure story, if you're not familiar with it. I do a lot of like choose your own adventure type stuff with Quick the Clockwork Knight. And I bring it up just because Gru is a huge influence on Quick the Clockwork Knight. In a lot of ways, Quick the Clockwork Knight is sort of my version of Gru. So if you dig Gru, you should definitely check out Quick the Clockwork Knight. Gru, especially like the old Grus, like back in the 80s, did a lot of really neat things. They used to do this thing called the secret message, and it went for a while, maybe like the first 50 or so issues of Gru. I think it started around issue 10, maybe. So maybe like 10 to 50, those 40 issues or so, they did this thing called the secret message. And I was like fascinated by this. And it was like a puzzle within the comic where you had to like decode the secret message. And the secret message was almost always ended up being decoded to be like, this is the secret message, or something stupid like that. But they would like hide it in places in the book. They would do I remember there's one where it was on a blanket, and they did it like in, was it Morse code? No, it's binary code. They did it in 0 and 1s on a blanket, and if you translated it out of binary code, it would say this is the secret message. They tell the story that it started with them Yeah, it was like Gru number 10 or something, somewhere around there, where they were doing the captions and the balloons. And the first balloon happened to start with the letter G, and the second balloon caption happened to start with the letter R, and then O and O. And they said it was an accident. I don't know. Maybe this is just part of the story. But when they saw that it was Gru, then they decided they each first letter of each caption throughout the comic would spell out Gru the Wanderer, the name of the comic. And then after that, they started doing like secret messages where they would hide it everywhere. And I love those secret messages. I loved it, loved it, loved it. There was something to me very, very exciting about just sort of like another layer to the comic, another layer to the story. Like you don't need to know about the secret message to enjoy the story of the comic. But to me, it was so cool that they were putting in that like extra effort to have like a game built into the comic. So I started doing that in all the Quick the Clockwork Knight comics, and almost all of them have, I forget which one I started with, but almost all of them have secret messages kind of sprinkled throughout them where I find different ways to hide different words in the comic. Like I did a short one called Inferno, where Quick goes to hell. And that one, like the secret message was hell, and I had it like hidden every 2 pages, like in different things, different ways. And to me, that's just sort of like, I don't know, it's like endlessly fascinating to kind of like come up with games. So I always try to like pack extra stuff in my comics. The Quick Clockwork Knight comics also have like keys, just like little metal keys on every single page. Some of them are super obvious. Some of them are super hard to see, super small. If you read like the afterwards in my different Quick Clockwork Knight graphic novels, I usually talk about that stuff and kind of what's there and what to look for if you can't find it. But anyway, Gru was a giant influence on me in that sort of thing. Oh yeah, Grant. Okay, so in the okay, see a couple more questions in the chat about how I came up. I'll talk about how I came up with Quick in just a second here. But the next comment is, I love all the puzzles and hidden things in the Quick books. Reminds me of reading Graham Bass's work when I was younger. Yes, Graham Bass is a big influence on that too. Specifically the 11th Hour book, right? Is this children's book that's just chock full of puzzles, and I look at that book often, and I have aped the puzzles in that very often. I've stolen the ideas that he's used for puzzles in that very often, because he kind of did them all as far as like visual clue puzzles and riddle puzzles. Yeah, that's another big influence, Graham Base for sure. And then yeah, and then right above that, there's a comment that says, I was going to ask you about the Clockwork Knight and how you came up with that character. And he's awesome. Thank you for saying he's awesome. Yeah, so the origin of the Clockwork Knight is very deliberate. I was working on another comic at the time. It was called, let me think, what was it called? It was called Jack B. Nimble, Private Investigator. And as you might guess, it was based like on what do you call it? Nursery rhymes, right? All the characters were like different nursery rhymes, and it was like like in retrospect, it was very obvious. It was like somebody pushed Humpty Dumpty off the wall, right, and murdered Humpty Dumpty, and Jack was trying to figure out who did it, right? So it's very much a straight up sort of film noir kind of mystery thing, but with this sort of nursery rhyme allegory thing to it, right? So anyway, it was like I said, I at one point I did want to be a novelist, so it was actually based on a novel length thing I wrote. And then I was like, oh, this could be a comic book. So then I was trying to like adapt it into a comic book. And I drew one issue of it. I did do one like full 20, it was probably about 24 pages, maybe 32. I think it was 24. I can't remember. I think it was a 24-page comic. And I was drawing it. It was based, it was like my own adaptation of my own book. And drawing it was a slog. It was like awful. I really like. I had a lot of fun writing it. It was like a really fun sort of writing exercise, and I like film noir type stuff. There's a lot of film noir stuff in Burnt and in Hellhole, right? Um, and yes, I had a lot of fun writing it, but drawing it, I was like, oh, it's just full of like lots of people, which I like monsters way more than people, but I just draw all these people, like all these crowd scenes of people. It was not super fun. Lots of buildings, lots of streets, lots of cars, telephone poles, kind of all these things that I thought of as kind of like film noir type trope type stuff, like the city as a character and all that. And even though I was happy with the story and I liked the story, it was kind of awful to draw. And I only had myself to blame because I wrote the damn things. So why am I making myself draw something that's full of things I don't like? Um so I was like, why don't I just make a list of all the things I like, and I'll build a comic around that for my next comic. That was my big brilliant idea. This is a paint pen. I gotta shake it up to make it work. I'm gonna put some whites on my skull here. Um, so I made a list of my 5 favorite things to draw, and I really did make a physical list. I wish I still had it. I don't know what happened to it, but I made a list and I wrote down 5 things. And I wrote monsters, dragons, knights, robots, and monsters. Those were my 5 favorite things to draw. So I looked at this list after I drew it, or after I wrote it, and come on, paint pen, you can work. There we go. And I looked at it, and I was like, well, why don't I just do a story that's about a knight who's also a robot, and he can fight monsters and dragons. It's and that was the beginning of Quick the Clockwork Knight. I was like, okay, so if he's a robot, he's probably and he's also a knight. He's probably like a steampunky, right, type robot. Like that would make sense for a knight to be a robot. And yeah, and I based the story entirely on that, entirely on things that I like to draw. And that was kind of the beginning of Quick the Clockwork Knight. And at first it was like a what do you call it? It was like a 3-issue miniseries, right? Was the beginning of it. And again, I tried to get publishers interested in it. Nobody was too interested in it. And then but at the time I'd done Burnt, or then As is Inferno on whatchamacallit, on Zuda for DC Comics. So then I kind of followed it up with Quick, and that was like my next entry into Zuda Comics, because right, it was like the competition, right? And it was accepted in the competition, and it was almost the exact same thing, where I was like in first place, and then I ended in second place at the last minute, and there was sort of a lot of heartache around that, a lot of dejection around. I was like, really, twice? I think I'm going to get this contract with DC. But in the end, I ended up self-publishing both, and in some ways, I think it worked out for the best. But if you're out there, DC, and you're watching this video right now, I'll still work with you. You want to do something together? Let's do something together. The nice thing about the Zuda competition is you did get paid by DC just to be in the competition. So I did get a check from DC. I got this tells you how long ago it was, because they actually sent checks. But I did get 2 different checks from them, and the checks were cool because they had like pictures of Superman and pictures of Wonder Woman, like right on the check. It was very DC. Like I almost didn't want to cash them, because I was like, these are cool checks, but I needed the money, so I definitely did cash them. But that's kind of the origins of Quick the Clockwork Knight. All right, let me check Patreon here again, because I got to get through this list of my Patreon people. Oh, I don't think I asked this, but this kind of connects with stuff we've already talked about. So I got another question. I love how you've added extra elements to your stories with puzzles, search and find games, and choose your own adventure mechanics, as well as the games you've developed, which we kind of talked about. What are some of your favorite games, classic and modern? Favorite games. So I do like games a lot. I do make games too. I make I kind of fiddle around with lots of different games, but the ones I've actually produced are called Monster Rummy, which is sort of like the game Rummy. It's very much like the game Rummy, which is like a set making game, except in my version, Monster Rummy, you actually build monsters when you make your sets. So Monster Rummy, and then Kitten Apocalypse War was another game I made, and I made it right when the tariff stuff was out of control with China. So I ended up, most games you go through China to produce, just because games are expensive to make. And it makes a giant difference to produce them in China, to publish them in China versus here. But because of the tariff stuff was completely off the hook, and I had no idea what it was going to cost by the time it actually showed up on the boat from China, I had to produce it here in the US, which was much more expensive, and I made many fewer games as a result. And I've since sold out of all the Kitten Apocalypse War games, like all of them. They sold out fairly quickly. So anyway, so that's all to say. Like Kitten Apocalypse War is coming back. I'm going to do another version of it now that the trade stuff has calmed down. It's not. It's still an issue. Tariffs are still an issue, but they're not as nuts as they were, about a year ago. So anyway, yeah. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be coming to Kickstarter sooner than later. Kitten Apocalypse War. But what are some of my favorite games? I mean, I was into video games. I was into Super Mario Bros. Like the original Super Mario Bros. The original Nintendo Entertainment System is kind of my generation of when I was a kid. So I was big into that. Castlevania. I think if you know the original Castlevania, you can kind of see that influence in my artwork. I really like those kind of games. I am a big fan of card games in general. I like pretty much all card games. My favorite game is a game we call Silly Hat, which is sort of a it's sort of a homebrew version of the game Asshole, if you know the card game Asshole. That's I think is my favorite game. But we play a lot of Euchre is a popular game I play a lot of, which is kind of like if you've never heard of Euchre, it's kind of like Spades or Hearts or any of those games. Bridge, all those games are kind of similar, like trick taking games they call them. We have like partners and stuff. So I like that stuff. I like card games a lot. I like the game Pandemic a lot. That's kind of a cooperative board game. I don't play like crazy hardcore games. I used to play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and role playing GURPS, different role playing games when I was younger. But I'm into more like shorter games these days. Machi Koro is a pretty cool board. I guess it's a card and dice game. That's a game I like a lot. There's a great Gru game called Gru the Game that's based on the comic book. That's phenomenal. If you're a fan of the comic book, it's worth it to track down the Gru game. It was out of print forever, but Steve Jackson Games just a couple years ago re-released it, so now you can find it again. But yeah, Gru the Game is phenomenal. Okay, here's my little skull with some of the paint on there. Let's just quick little skull drawing. All right, let's draw something else. Grab another piece of cardboard here. All right, what's in the chat? Let me catch up with the chat real quick. Do I have any favorite examples of film noir? Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so when I was in art school, I went to Syracuse University in Syracuse, New York, for art school, and I took a class on film noir. There was also, I wasn't in it, but there was like a film school as part of the art school. I was in the illustration school. I was an illustration major, but we could take class. We could take the other major classes, right? And they did a film noir class, and I had no idea what it was, but I was like, oh, it's a film class. You get to like watch. I had no idea what film noir was, but you can watch movies as homework. I'm like, that sounds great. Sign me up. So I took this film noir class, and I learned all about film noir, which noir, unless I'm mistaken, I think it means, God, does it mean black or night? Noir. I think it means black in French. God, I'm pretty sure it means black. But it's basically detective films, kind of like Humphrey Bogart is sort of the quintessential film noir guy. But film noir comes from American cinema in the kind of the 40s, kind of post World War II. There were detective stories about that before that, but kind of post World War II, they kind of identify as the beginning of film noir, in that they have these sort of like dark story, sort of creepy crime stories start appearing in American cinema. Depending on who you ask, they'll tell you different ones as the beginning of film noir. But like the Maltese Falcon is a famous one that a lot of people refer to. Double Indemnity is another famous one. So we watched a lot of these in the class. Some of the ones I liked the best was I'm blanking on the name. I think it's called, is it Kiss Me Deadly? What was that book? What was that one called? Oh, I could be screwing up the name. I think it's called Kiss Me Deadly or something like that. That was a great one. Yeah, it's either Kiss Me Deadly or something close to Kiss Me Deadly. But a lot of these movies have sort of the private eye character. Sam Spade, I think, is Humphrey Bogart in the Maltese Falcon. Um, and and it's kind of like them navigating a mystery, navigating a crime, and they're kind of they're not the police, right? So they're not like the established law. They're sort of an outsider, so they're sort of almost like semi criminals, right? But they kind of have their own like code of justice. And kind of the other thing with film noir is they often had sort of very bleak endings, very dark, very bleak. They weren't always happy endings. Some of them were pretty tragic. Um, Detour is another famous one from back in the day. Detour is a very, very interesting movie. It's kind of a down on his luck guy, and everything just keeps happening worse for him. The characters aren't always detectives, but they're often private detectives. Sometimes they're sort of like a regular man, like a regular guy who gets in trouble, gets in over his head. Chinatown, is from the 70s. That's more of a, they call neo noir sometimes, or a modern noir, but that is a great, great movie. I highly recommend Chinatown. LA Confidential, I would qualify as a noir. That's from the early 2000s. That's a great movie. Yeah, it's for sure a good one. What's DOA is a great noir movie. I like the old one, and I like the new one that was made. It's either the 90s or early 2000s with what's his name? Dennis, was it Dennis Quaid? I think it was Dennis Quaid did the new one. That one I thought was great too. That was a really good story. I'm sure there's lots of other really good ones I'm not thinking of right now. But yeah, film noir is cool stuff, and I did get turned on to it back in college, and it was kind of an early influence on my writing. Let's see. All right, let me go. How are we doing on time? Oh my God, we've been doing this 40 minutes. Thanks for sticking around, everyone. I had no idea I've been talking this long. Time flies when you're talking film noir. I want to make sure I hit all of my Patreon questions. I think I only had one left. Wow, it's a long one though. Okay. Oh no, I just forgot to put spaces between these questions when I wrote them down. Okay, I think the Haunted Tower book is the only example I've ever read of an interactive / branching comic book. Do you know any other examples of the medium, or were you pretty much making it up from scratch? Yeah, so the Haunted Tower is what I would call a choose your own adventure graphic novel. It doesn't say choose your own adventure on it anywhere, because that is a trademarked term from the good people at the Choose Your Own Adventure books, but everyone sort of recognizes that as the as what it is, right? Right, a story where the reader gets to decide where you go and kind of influences the outcome of the book. So there are a few examples of other kind of interactive stories. There's not like a ton out there. Choose Your Own Adventure, I think through Oni Press, did put out a few Choose Your Own Adventure graphic novels not that long ago. I read a few of them. They were not the best. I think there's much better interactive stories out there. Jason Shiga is an artist who's kind of like a mad genius type comic book artist, and he does a lot of like interactive story stuff, and they're all very good and they're all very interesting. Meanwhile was a book I believe he self-published, then was later picked up by Amulet Books. So that's one you can find. It's called Meanwhile. It has like time travel in it. It's like a super crazy story, but it's great. It's a great, great story. He did another book called Hello World, which is I have it. Is it right over there? I do have it. Okay, I'm going to show it to you rather than me describe it. This I don't know if you can find anywhere because it was self-published, but it's an amazing book. So this is Hello World by Jason Shiga. So check this out. So this is like a self-published book he did, and he basically cut it in the middle, so it's like two books. There's a bottom and a top. So check it out. So this is like a story, and the bottom is your suitcase that you fill with stuff, and the top is kind of the story, right? So you start off the original story is you're trying to bake a cake, so your mom sends you to the store, and you can pick different things to put in your suitcase before you go. You can pick things like, let me just show you an example here. You can pick things like money. You can pick things like a gun. Like you can put all this different stuff in your suitcase before you leave. And then when you go to the store, depending on what you have in your suitcase influences what happens in the store. And it's like this crazy puzzle game. It's super hard. It's like super complicated. I could never figure it out. No matter what I put in the suitcase, I always never got home with butter. Like it never seemed to work out. And then I was like tutoring this young lady in comic book stuff, and I brought this up an example of like a cool crazy thing you could do in a comic. And she was like, "Oh, can I borrow it?" It's like, "Yeah, you can borrow it." And so I gave it to her, and then I came back the next week, and she had solved it. She had figured it out. And I was like, "How? How did you do it?" She's like, "Oh, I just figured if I needed this, that would happen." So this is my cheat sheet. There, she explained to me what you put in the suitcase to win, because I could never figure it out. But this young woman is much smarter than me, apparently. So anyway, Jason Shiga does interactive books. I would highly recommend anything by Jason Shiga. He also did a super crazy book called Demon that is amazing. It is not interactive, but it is unlike anything I've ever read before. It is a wild, wild story. He kind of has deceptively kind of simple artwork, like very cartoony, very kind of simple drawings. But Demon is very what's the word? I mean, it's graphic. It's super duper graphic. It's super disturbing and maybe even more disturbing because of how cutesy the drawings are. So again, it is not like a all ages story. I just just be aware there's going to be a lot of violence and bodily fluids in Demon. But I can't. But if you have the stomach for it, Demon is like maybe one of the best comics ever written. Period. But it's super gross. So just don't blame me if it grosses you out. Another so what else? Interactive stories. So there's a few out there. Um, I mentioned I don't like the specific choose your own adventure ones from Oni Press, and I think the reason I don't like them is like there's certain things that work well as a choose your own adventure novel, like a prose novel, that don't translate well into comic books, and there's certain things that you can do with comic books that you can't quite do with just a straight up prose story, right? So I think there's like different strengths and weaknesses in both mediums. So I say that just to say like I've done several, and I think I've sort of figured out like what works and what doesn't work, and different ways you can kind of push the boundaries. So yes, I did model it on like my own experience, like reading choose your own adventure um prose novels. I was aware of Jason Shiga's work. So he was an example too. There's a great comic. It's Quirk Books is the publisher. Oh, what is it called? It's like these two kids and they go on an adventure. It's like a fairy tale adventure. Oh, I can't think of the name of it. But the publisher is definitely Quirk Books. And it's like these two kids who go on a fairy tale adventure. There's at least two of them. And they're also they also do things a little differently the way they do the interactive stuff. Theirs is very much like a game. Like you have like character sheets and you get like different abilities and stuff throughout the game, like different you can pick up different objects and whatnot throughout the game. Um, so yeah, Quirk Books, interactive story. I'm so mad I can't think of the name of the book. It's like the two kids' names. It's not Hansel and Gretel, but it's something like that. These two kids. But those are ones I highly recommend. And the other one that I like a lot is Ryan North is the author. I forget who the illustrator is, but it's a Star Trek Lower Decks Warp Your Own Way graphic novel. I believe it's IDW is the publisher. That is a phenomenal book. They do very interesting things with the choose your own adventure mechanics in that book, and they and I mean this in a good way. They like exploit the concept of what choose your own adventure is in very interesting ways, and that's one I highly recommend if you like interactive books. I like Star Trek fine. I'm not like a giant Star Trek fan. I've never seen the show Lower Decks like ever. Like I don't even really know what it is other than this book I read. But I like loved it. I love this book. So even if you're not into Star Trek, I highly recommend checking out Star Trek Lower Decks Warp Your Own Way, I believe is the title. But Ryan North is definitely the author. And it's phenomenal. So check it out. Let me make sure. I think I had one more Patreon question here. Do you have voices or voice actors in mind for any of your characters? I feel they all have different voices in the way they're written. A lot of your comics have sections that are a single image with a. Oh wait, this is a separate question. That's two different questions. Um, that's an interesting question about voices. I don't think I think specifically about like not like literal voices that you can like hear. I mean, I certainly think about character, and I certainly think about you people's like motivation and that sort of thing. That sort of like writerly sort of thing. I think about a lot, like what people want and kind of the way people speak. But I don't think I actually like hear their voices like out loud. Like I couldn't like name actors or even voice actors that I would like that would be my ideals or whatever for my characters. Which is interesting because I do listen to a lot of audiobooks while I work. While I draw, I most always listen to an audiobook or a podcast. And I like radio dramas. I actually like those a lot. I listen to a fair amount of those too. Modern radio dramas and kind of old-timey radio dramas. I am a fan of that sort of thing. So I like audio entertainment. Like I'm a big fan of it. But I guess I just don't necessarily think that way when I'm writing my characters or working on my stories. Although now that I got this question, I might start thinking that way. We'll see. That's a very interesting question. All right, and let me make sure there was one more here. A lot of your comics have sections that are a single image with a character moving through it. Do you usually write the action first and then draw the image to match it, or draw the image first and then write the action to explore it, or a bit of both? The short answer is a bit of both. I do write things down before I draw. I do even there is, writing of everything before there is any sort of drawing of it, but the writing is often very, very loose. So I do change things as I draw them. And a lot of kind of which I do a lot, like the big image with a single character going through, kind of going on a crazy adventure. Um, I do have an idea, and I usually do write something first for what it's going to be, but then I very often add stuff to it, like as I'm drawing it. I'm like, oh, it'd be cool if this happened, or what if this happened? And that can often, we early on we talked about like the endings of books or whatever, or knowing the ending before you start. Like very often, like as I'm drawing it, I'll be like, oh, if this happened here, like that'll change what happens at the end of the book or the end of the image or the story. Excuse me, whatever you want to call it. Um, yeah. So yeah, it kind of goes back to my earlier answer, which is like I basically make it up as I go, make it up as I go, and refine it as I go too. But I do put words on paper or words on a computer anyway for any kind of story before I start it. But very often I'm working on like another graphic novel thing right now. Very often I'll write something out, but then once I actually start drawing it, it does change, it does evolve. Things occur to you, and sometimes I'll write something out and be like, oh, this will look awesome, and then I start to draw it and it does not look awesome. So sometimes I have to adjust to things don't always pan out as actual drawings as I think they will when I'm writing them down. I'm like, and then draw this and it'll look great. And then if it doesn't look great, I will adjust, so to speak. Awesome. All right, let me see if there's anything I missed in the chat. Oh, medieval. Yeah. Yeah, for the drawing for sure. Um okay, I don't think I missed any questions. All right, so we got about 5 minutes left, so I am gonna wrap this drawing up. How many have I done? I only got through 3. I thought I would do like 10 in an hour. That's so funny. I have been stopping to talk though. I was like, oh, I'll blast through these drawings real quick. So anyway, so there's 3 drawings. These are all up for grabs for anyone who's on the in the live chat now, or watching this live. Who is also, you have to be a backer, because you have to be a physical backer, because I have to be sending you something already. But if you are a physical backer and you are watching this, please make sure you put your say something in the chat so I have a record of it, and make sure you put your Kickstarter username So I am sure to send these to the right people. And anyone who's watching this after the fact, watching the recording of it, or and everyone who's currently in here with us right now, will also be getting the sleight of hand short story. If you are a physical backer, you'll be getting a physical mini comic of it. If you're a digital backer, you will get a digital comic of it. But again, you have to put your make sure your Kickstarter username appears somewhere in the chat so I know who to send it to, and I will definitely send you that stuff. I want to thank everyone who has supported the Kickstarter. I really, really appreciate it. I kind of make weird, kind of experimental comics. I think that's kind of what I'm good at, but it's not always something that connects with an audience, at least not necessarily on like a mass scale. So I am very appreciative of Kickstarter, and I am very appreciative of people who support things on Kickstarter, because that is the bulk of my career is Kickstarter. So thank you all for giving me a career in comics. I really can't thank people enough for that. For supporting me and supporting other independent artists is a wonderful thing to do. If you have any last minute questions, put them in the chat now and I'll try and answer them. Let's see, am I missing anything? Awesome, looks good. I have a question I have gotten is like, what's next after this? So the next thing that'll be on Kickstarter very shortly, and I know a lot of you already have known about this beforehand, but Hellhole Quarterly issue number 4 will be on Kickstarter very soon. It's already done. It was just a matter of getting Burnt done first before I could get to Hellhole Quarterly. Because even though Hellhole Quarterly is a separate story, it also takes place in Hell, the same Hell as Burnt, but many years later. So there are all new characters, all new stories. But there are if you're familiar with Burnt and you read Hellhole, there are a few sort of Easter egg things. There are a few things that you can connect, but the stories are largely independent from each other. But anyway, once I started doing Hellhole Quarterly, all of a sudden everyone got interested in Burnt again. So I sold out of Burnt. So that's why I decided to do another printing of Burnt before we wrapped up Hellhole Quarterly. But Hellhole Quarterly will be on Kickstarter probably before the end of the month. You know, I gotta check a couple things, get certain things worked out. But Hellhole Quarterly number 4 will be coming out very, very soon, probably within a week or two of this Kickstarter wrapping up. So that's what's next on Kickstarter, and then after that will probably be Kitten Apocalypse War, which I talked about at the beginning of the video. That'll be coming. The new version of Kitten Apocalypse War will probably follow that. There's a couple, there are a couple things over here I was going to show. Maybe I'll show those real quick before we wrap up. How are we doing on time? We're almost at an hour. It's okay if we go over a minute or two. I'm almost done with this drawing. Let me just finish it up here. Yeah, so the original Burnt was my first foray into Kickstarter way back when, in 2010-ish. Is that right? Something like that. That was the very first thing I ever self-published. And then I eventually ran out of it. So then I made a new version of it, which was also on Kickstarter. And that's what most people these days have, kind of the hardcover version. And then this will be basically the third iteration of Burnt. So here's the drawing. This one came out pretty nice. I think I kind of hit my stride with these cardboard drawings. So there we go. So God, I only did 3. I really thought I was going to do more. Okay, but I will raffle off those 3. But Burnt, I was talking about, this was the previous version of Burnt, the hardcover that a lot of people have that came out. I should have a date in here for when it came out. When did it come out? According to this, it was published in 2016. Okay, so 10 years ago, this one came out. And prior to that, 2011 or so is when the first Burnt came out. The first Burnt, I did a bunch of soft covers, which if you have one of those, that's one of the originals. I do not haven't had one of those in a long, long time. But then I also published 10 hardcovers of the originals. So there's only 10 of these in existence. I didn't realize I still had one. I was very surprised when I found this on my shelf. So this is the original version of Burnt. It's kind of like a newsprinty kind of paper in the middle here, but it is a nice dust jacket hardcover, and if you take it off, it is like the cloth bound book underneath. I couldn't even tell you where I printed this. I don't remember. This was like 16 years ago or so, but it does have like the little bit of the foil. Is it upside down? A little bit of the foil stamping there. This is when I used to sign everything with my middle name, Thane Frederick Benson, which I've since dropped, but it is on the original Burnt here. But anyway, I found one of these. I found one of the originals hardcovers, which again is like one of 10. So they're very, there's not very many of them out there. And I found one of the previous ones. I also thought, like I said, I sold out of Burnt, and then I came across just this one that I have of the second version of Burnt. So anyway, because I found these, I think I will go ahead and put these up on the Kickstarter. They're like one of one. I only have one of each, so I'll put them on there. If you're interested, you can grab it. They're in good condition, but they're not like mint condition. I just want to be very clear about that. There is some very minor scuffing on it, but I only have one of each, so they are as is. But I'm going to put those both up if you want to get some of the early versions of Burnt. This one I will show you just real quick, because this has never been printed anywhere else. But this version of Burnt does have a very short comic, very short comic in the back here called "How to Pick Up Women in a Bar," an instructional comic by Thane Frederick Benson. That is kind of a very, I think it's is it 4 pages long? Yeah, it's 4 pages long. It's a very silly, very strange little comic that has a very giant twist ending, so I can't even really talk about it. But it has only ever appeared in the very first version of Burnt. So that is an exclusive comic if you're interested in grabbing. You can only find in that book. So let's see. So yeah. So I want to mention those two things, because I am going to put them as add-ons on Kickstarter right after I wrap up this video. I'm going to do one more look here real quick at the comments to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Okay, I think I answered all the questions. I apologize if you put a question there and I didn't answer. I do not see it. But I want to thank all you for coming to check this out. I really appreciate you being here. I really appreciate you backing the Kickstarter. The support means everything. Yeah, and I hope you had fun. It was fun for me. And yeah, maybe I should do another one of these in the future. We will see. All right. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to end the stream. I will see. We got 1 week left on the Kickstarter, and then we will celebrate together when it wraps up. All right. Good night, everyone.